Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing.
Hey everyone, David Aragona here, taking a look at the stakes action at Tampa Bay Downs on Saturday. Two graded stakes on the turf. In this video, I'm going to take a look at race 9, the grade 3 Tampa Bay Stakes. I already did another video on the Endeavor for the Fillies and Bears. Both of these races are wide open, competitive races with large fields signed on, and that's certainly the case in this Tampa Bay Stakes. An oversubscribed field of 12 with 2 also eligible runners, making it a field of 14 in total. But again, only 12 will participate. And as you can tell from the morning line odds, the public is going to have its work cut out for him because the number 10, Chez Pierre, a lukewarm favorite at 3-1, but a lot of horses in this race could potentially take money. Many runners coming in with similar looking speed figures, and trips are going to be of some importance here because we do have a few horses that want to be forwardly placed. That number 10, Chez Pierre, should be noted, does have some tactical speed, but he has shown the ability to stalk at his prior races, and he'll be looking to keep his undefeated record intact as he seeks to go 6 for 6 in his career with a victory in this Tampa Bay Stakes on Saturday. Before we get to the contenders, though, let's talk about that pace situation a little bit and check out the Timeform US pace projector. Not a big surprise to see the number 4, Win From Within, depicted on the front end. This is a horse that does have plenty of natural speed. He's been the leader at the first call in the last 4 starts in a row, so he figures to go forward from his inside post position. The number 3, Mighty Heart, is a little bit of a wild card. He's definitely a speed type, but he hasn't been too successful in his prior turf races, so I think it remains to be seen what kind of early speed he's going to display in this turf race. And also the number 9, Drama Chorus, a horse that I'm not going to talk about as an individual contender, but another one that does have plenty of early speed and should be pressing Win From Within on the front end. And again, before we get to these contenders, let's take a look at the Timeform US finish projector as we've been doing in these recent Timeform US Stakes previews. And like I was been telling you, you can check out this finish projector in your DRF mobile PPs by tapping on that Timeform US tab and toggling over to the finish projector from the pace projector. And this is the Timeform US algorithm selecting the most likely winner of the race, and that is the number 4, Win From Within. He's coming in with really solid speed figures. Speed is always dangerous in American racing, so the algorithm is selecting him as the winner of this race, with the number 7, Field Pass, and the number 3, Mighty Heart, shown closest up to him in the late stages. It should be noted, though, that Mighty Heart, I think, is showing so high up in the finish projector due to some speed figures on the dirt. Again, he hasn't run as fast in some of his turf races, so I think we'll have to see if he can be successful on this surface. Well, let's go through some of these main contenders, and I'm going to begin with that morning line favorite, the number 10, Chez Pierre. Like I said, this horse is undefeated. We'll take a look at his last victory when he was competing at Laurel in the Henry Clark Stakes, and this was a really impressive performance. His second start in this country, he takes over with authority at the top of the stretch and draws off to win this race by over 5 lengths, was beating some pretty good horses in here, including Field Pass, who was back in this race, and he just demolished this field. Now, it's not a great sign that he's been off for so long since then. That race was all the way back in April of 2022. So he's been off for about 9 or 10 months since that race. Also, that was a big step forward off his U.S. debut when he won by a neck over another horse he's facing today, Drama Chorus, at Tampa Bay Downs. That day, back in March of 2022, he was coming off a similar layoff, and I thought he really improved second time in this country. So it remains to be seen if now coming off another long layoff, if he's really ready to fire his best shot, or if we're going to see him once again take a step forward once he gets this race under his belt. All of that aside, this is obviously a horse with a ton of talent. Based on that performance in the Henry Clark last year, I would not have been surprised if he went on to success in Grade 1 competition later in the year. Clearly a setback forced that not to happen, but they're hoping that he can get back on track in his 5-year-old debut and potentially keep that undefeated record intact. Let's move on to the horse that the Timeform US algorithm selected as the winner of this race, the number 4, Win From Within. And we'll take a look at his last race when he was 4th in the Fort Lauderdale Stakes, a Grade 2 event at Gulfstream Park. I thought he ran pretty well this day. The winner, City Man, is a really nice horse who had been in great form coming in here. The runner-up, Decorated Invader, another runner that was in great form at the time for the Christophe Clement barn. And you can see Win From Within really trying to fight back between horses to hold on to that runner-up position, just kind of gets swallowed up as they come to the finish there. And he had been setting a pretty honest pace that day. No pace figures color-coded in red for that performance, but you see plenty of red splashed across his running lines for the prior races he was coming out of. This is a horse that can go fast in the early stages and still finish off, so that's definitely a good attribute to have in a race that is predicted to feature a fast pace like this Tampa Bay Stakes is. He's got a string of 120 plus time formula speed figures coming in here, and if he delivers another one of those, he's probably going to be in the mix at the finish of this race. Another horse that's coming out of the Fort Lauderdale that finished much farther back in the pack is the number 2, Kentucky Ghost. This horse checked in 11th that day behind City Man. Clearly, he was not at his best on that afternoon, just really didn't fire. Same thing too back at Del Mar. They shipped him out west, and he just put in a dull effort. So there are some questions about where this horse is at from a form standpoint at the moment, but he was capable of producing some nice efforts going all the way back to October of last year when he won an allowance race at Keeneland with a pretty strong 121 time form US speed figure. He got a fast place to coast into that day and really capitalized on it, getting up to win that race by a length. He can be a little bit of a Jekyll or Hyde. You really don't know what you're going to get from him, somewhat inconsistent, but he does tend to run well when he gets Lasix, and he is getting Lasix back for the first time since that Keeneland triumph in this race on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. So maybe a horse at a price that you might want to consider in this Tampa Bay Stakes. Let's move on to another horse that's coming out of a race at Gulfstream Park. That is He's Pure Gold, and we'll take a look at his allowance victory from New Year's Day. Now, this is a horse that is stepping up in class. He really hasn't been too competitive at the graded stakes level in his career so far, but this performance suggests that he might be ready for the step up in class now at this point in his 5-year-old season. This was a really dominant victory. He was sent off at 9-1 this day, so it wasn't the easiest spot, didn't get that much respect from the public, but he wins pretty easily by 2.5 lengths, earned a strong 119 time form US speed figure. That number should translate pretty well in here. He's coming out of a fast-paced race, landing in another one that could feature an honest pace, and drawing the outside post position. He is a horse that might be able to overcome that wide draw because he does possess some tactical speed that could allow him to get forward in this race. Another horse that you might want to consider is the number 7 Field Pass. I already mentioned him regarding his prior performance against Chez Pierre. Well, that was the last race for Chez Pierre. Field Pass has run 7 times since he faced Chez Pierre in the Henry Clark, so that kind of gives some perspective on how long ago that race was. But recently, Field Pass has kind of just been running middling performances, hasn't really been that competitive, just finishing off the board in a string of races, but he's still earning some decent speed figures, and I'm willing to forgive his last performance when he didn't run that well over the Tapeta surface at Turfway Park. Perhaps that's just not the ideal situation for him. He had run pretty well in his prior race in the Knickerbocker when there was not much pace signed on, and he was 2 to 3 wide around the turns on a day when you really wanted to be on the rail. So I think Field Pass definitely has the races to be competitive here. It's just a matter of whether or not he can produce that form on Saturday. Let's move on to another runner that's switching surfaces coming into this race. That's the number 11, Dakota Gold. He last ran in an off-the-turf race on the Tapeta surface at Gulfstream Park in the Tropical Park Derby. Was part of a blanket finish that day, losing by a neck, finishing in a dead heat for third. That 112 time formula speed figure, though, the best performance that he's put forth so far in his career, matching his narrow loss at Saratoga last summer. This New York bred probably hasn't run against the kind of company that he'll be facing here, so this is definitely a step up in class. He certainly has some upside making his first start as a 4-year-old, but I've personally never been the biggest fan of him. He's a horse that tends to take some money in his races, so I wanted to look at some other contenders. And among them are some other horses that are making their 4-year-old debuts, including Emmanuel. Let's take a look at his race 2 back when he won the Pennine Ridge Stakes, going all the way back to last summer at Belmont Park. And he got things his own way this day, was able to set a slow pace on the front end, just sprint through the stretch, really never let any of the closers get into the race. They were all playing Emmanuel's game on this occasion, but at least he did show that he handles the turf and could beat a graded stakes quality field. Unfortunately, he had a setback after this, was forced to miss a planned start in the Belmont Derby. Then he ran back in the Saratoga Derby, really did not not run his race that day, failed to make the early lead, folded up pretty quickly around the far turn. So he's got some questions to answer as he comes back off a lengthy layoff here. Also, based on that pace projector, he is not predicted to be fast enough to get to the early lead here, and it really remains to be seen if he will be as effective coming from off the pace. I've got some questions about this horse, and he's another one that's taken some money at different points during his career. Another horse that's making his 4-year-old debut is the number 8 Verbal. Let's take a look at this horse's last victory, which actually came during his 2-year-old season in 2021. This is the Cecil B. DeMille Stakes at Del Mar. It was just the second start of his career. He was winning for the second time, and he looked like a very promising horse at this point. Things did not go according to plan, though. He was off for a little bit of time during the winter when he turned 3 years old, came back in the Transylvania Stakes at Keeneland and just got the wrong trip that day. He was a little bit too keen in the early stages, was 3 to 4 wide around both turns with no cover. That is just not the right kind of trip on the turf. Off for a long time once again after that. So definitely he's had some setbacks, but I think it's pretty noteworthy that Chad Brown is bypassing a softer N2X allowance race that probably would have come up either at Tampa or Gulfstream Park to instead target this graded stakes race for this horse's return. He clearly was well regarded at one point in his career, and I think he's better than that last race might indicate. He's coming back as a new gelding for a barn, Chad Brown, that can certainly have horses ready to fire off a long layoff. So I think that Verbal is pretty interesting in this race, and I suspect that he could drift up off that 5-1 morning line, just given how competitive this race is. So let's throw out my picks for this race. And as I was kind of getting at there, I do like the number 8 Verbal. I'm hoping for a decent price on him. I really wouldn't want to go much lower than 6-1 because this is such a wide open race. But I do think this horse has some upside. And I've seen some things in his prior races to suggest that with natural improvement and maturity, he might be able to get to this level. But I have no illusions that it's going to be easy to beat the number 10 Chez Pierre. He is a very talented horse on the evidence of that Henry Clark win last year, and clearly loves to win races. So if he is ready to fire off the layoff, it could be hard to stop him from keeping that undefeated record intact in the Tampa Bay Stakes on Saturday at Tampa Bay Downs. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.